Good morning. Just started early this morning because I don't think you want to miss that sky. It's not sunrise yet. It's not too far away. But it's really worth it to see that art, heavenly art, right above the Golan. All the different forms. Amazing, all God created to stimulate us. Like all the little stimulations parents give little babies and small children to get them to wake up, to discover reality, to respond, to coordinate their senses, to help them discover this amazing world. This first letter of John is really digging deeply into the Hebrew scriptures, but also advancing mankind, each of us, each human being, to a real serious reflection about what's going on inside of us. And it's not because these guys are great psychologists or philosophers. They have had an experience that has changed their understanding of life and of God. God is love. So life is about love. Life is about living with love. Somehow, what came to mind is the prodigal son and his father and his brother. And one of the big words today, and one of the big vocabulary words today in this letter is, again, like yesterday, hatred. And the other huge word, much bigger and more powerful and more definitive, is love. But they're in a certain sense reflecting the sides of our heart, or the moments of our heart, or the movements of our heart. How much parents love a child, but then the child gets in trouble. Maybe far away from home. Prodigal sons type of story. Maybe hijacked by a relationship where they have given up their own freedom, their own understanding, their own good criteria that they learned from mom and dad. Or maybe that parable from the gospel is very enlightening, where somebody sowed bad weeds, real weeds, weeds are weeds, sowed weeds in the garden, and now all the good that was sown is mixed up with all the bad. and the parents still love. They cannot but love. God is love. Parenting is loving. But the sibling has a different reaction when the prodigal son is recovered. And he's angry, irritated, hateful, rejecting the father's love, disclaiming his own brother. Your son, he didn't say my brother. This son of yours. And so I feel personally called to think of the moments of tension I've had and irritation toward other people. Sometimes did direct harm to me. And it's hard to think that it wasn't intentional because of certain things that happened. And then others who had a reaction, maybe out of good intentions and good principles, but absolutely ignoring the situation and coming out with very, very inconceivable thoughts and ideas and impositions. And I've passed moments wondering, the reaction to these people hasn't been easy for me. Thanks be to God, I've been blessed over the years to not get ensnared and trapped and blocked and imprisoned and there's the sunrise, and held down by the chains of hatred, or catapulted by the leverage of hatred to hurt the other. And we're all very weak, and it could so easily happen. There are very strong lines in the reading. I almost don't want to say them verbally here. Better you read them. In today's reading, you have the link here. Maybe you've already been reading before we got started this morning. Actually, one of my most frequent prayers here for people since October the 7th, all the horrendous things that happened on October the 7th and continued to this time, the suffering of people, those who are victimized, and sometimes reacting then in uncontrolled ways, or very controlled, intentional ways of destruction. My prayer has been that people won't get trapped by hatred, that won't get imprisoned by hatred, that won't let themselves be victimized by hatred, hijacked by hatred. Hatred is horrible. It's the end of life. And we're coming from God who is love, so our essence is love. And the great educational struggle and effort for parents to teach siblings to love each other, even though there are major conflicts over a teddy bear, world-affecting conflicts over teddy bears, you know. And the parents have to help the child to see that that's all relative. That it's much more about my sibling is more important than the teddy bear. My sibling, that's a big struggle for humanity. My neighbor is more important than a dispute over the fence. There must be another way to resolve this issue. And even the fact of having the issue is a great advantage, if I may say so, because let's say you're living with a peaceable neighbor, a peaceful neighbor, a kind neighbor, a gentle neighbor, a humble neighbor, a modest neighbor. So you're spoiled with goodness from this neighbor. But let's say you're living with a neighbor that's or a sibling that's very difficult, or a child that's very difficult, very demanding, very hurtful. And then you're learning to cope with this. And it's not nice, and sometimes you lose sleep over it. You can't sleep well because of the terrible irritation of the relationship. But then there's the grace of stretching my heart, opening my heart, perceiving some of the difficulty the other has. And growing myself to become more patient, to become more understanding, more forgiving, to become love. Because the one who created me is love. And I'm called to be love, and I'm called to be life-giving. I'm called to be a blessing for all those around me. We're having a delightful sunrise this morning, I tell you. It's so beautiful. So incredible. This is where I got my sticks, down here someplace, a month or so ago. And then we have the whole opposite gift of love. Well, that's not the opposite, because what the parents have to do to love that way, or the sibling has to do to love a difficult sibling, that's incredibly blessed. And there's nobody like God looking with love on a person who's struggling in this way to make it happen, to keep the relationship going, to rebuild, to reconcile, to redeem, to rescue, first responders, to save. It's great to save people from a fire in a building, it's marvelous. But to save people from the fire of hatred, of self-destruction, what a victory. What a blessing. But today we have the reading in the gospel, which is amazing. It's where, like, it's all positive, on the positive side of the spectrum. And so now Jesus here in Galilee, and he's called Philip, who's also from Bethsaida, who's just across the lake there. Philip saw this lake. And then I'm not sure, it's not clear where he met Jesus, but maybe, where he met Bartholomew. But Bartholomew is the next guy, Nathaniel. There's a lot to say about him. By the way, we did a series on the apostles there a couple of years ago here at Magdala. They're on the Magdala thing. If you probably Google series of the apostles or something, or maybe somebody wants to put up a link there. And Philip goes and shares the good news with Nathaniel, and he says, "We found him. We found him." And he brings Nathaniel to Jesus, even though Nathaniel was resisting at first. You know the way it is between friends. And in most of the lists of the apostles, Philip and Bartholomew are side by side, Bartholomew following Philip. And in John's Gospel, Philip calls Nathaniel. It seems he has two names, Nathaniel and Bartholomew. At least that's a traditional viewpoint from early on. And there's this great encounter. Maybe it's the most in-depth one, really. We don't see that much of a conversation. A little bit with John and Andrew and their encounter. We had it there a couple of days ago. And now with Nathaniel, there's a conversation, and it looks like Jesus really knows Nathaniel inside out before having met him. And Nathaniel is flabbergasted. And he gives him all kinds of titles. The language they have between them, these disciples, is amazing because they're expressing, articulating what they have perceived. John's Gospel is fascinating because it's always dealing with the mystery of Jesus, like where he's coming from, his identity. Today, that's pencil stroke. He's from Nazareth. But they can't figure out where he's from because his identity transcends what it could be, you know, that kind of local boy. Nathaniel's blown away. But the idea of sharing something so good with another. People, let's leave it like that for today. God bless you. See you later, alligators, in this beautiful morning. And share something with somebody, something good, even a smile. That means so much. A smile. That means so much. Or maybe it's a question of working on some difficult relationship where there's a lot of irritation and a lot of threadbare issues and feelings. God bless you.